So in this video, I'm going to talk about television and its effect on family life, the family situation, what America does to pass its time, and some transformation in community life, social life that happened as a result of the widespread ownership of televisions. So I was just gathering together some notes from some older pieces that I wrote, and I just thought it would be a good subject for a video here. So this is mostly the negative side of television. So of course I do have a TV, which I do use, and I do use it quite a bit. And my kids do watch it more than I would like to admit. So, um, I'm not about to go throw my TV in the trash can, even though this information will make it sound like that's probably the best course of action. So it should just be interesting regardless, even if it's a little bit of a melodramatic message here. So in the 1970s, American society began a process of social cocooning, is what it's been called. And what this means is that we began focusing our leisure activities within the home rather than out in the community. So it was a slow process, but it actually coincides very much with the proliferation of the television in American homes. I mean, the television had been out for quite a while by then, but it was not widespread. So, for example, in 1950, barely 10% of American homes had a television set. So by 1950. By 1959, 9 years later, 90% had one. So it went from 10% to 90%, so almost total saturation in that decade of the 50s. By 1990, almost everyone had two televisions. So it makes sense that people will always tend to choose the cheapest and easiest means of entertainment when it comes to choosing how they're going to spend their leisure time. I mean, you work hard, you want something interesting to do, and you're not really wanting on a daily basis to spend a bunch of money or go to a lot of work to find something to do. So television is by far the cheapest and easiest entertainment option available. And until that time, until the 50s, families were forced out into the community for healthy community interaction because there just wasn't that much else to do. So it was the baseball field, America's pastime, everybody owning a baseball glove and all that stuff. There was the bowling alley for adults, skating rinks, theaters, community dances, picnics. Those are all options. And they're entertaining and they're relational. They actually build communities. Those are all positive with respect to community interaction. Unfortunately, they also require planning and cost energy and can have obstacles that must be overcome, like weather. TV has none of these difficulties, costs very little, and requires no energy or planning, really. So by 1995, the television was absorbing 40% of Americans' free time. So 40%, not quite the majority of American free time was spent in front of the TV, but close. So that was in 1995. By year 2000, the average person watched about 4 hours daily. And I don't know, that statistic still shocks me and sounds unbelievable. And even the people I know that watch a lot of TV, 4 hours seems like a lot. And so to say that the average person, and not just in the extremes, watches 4 hours, but I mean, I checked various places, and 4 hours a day by the year 2000 seemed to be what people were saying. So I guess if we're going to trust the data, that's what they're saying. Increases in available leisure time in society. So when we develop situations where we have more leisure time, it only makes it worse. So Americans gained 6 hours a week in added leisure time between 1965 and 1995. And usually that's associated with higher standard of living. Usually that's considered a good thing. So as a society, in the week, we gained 6 hours of extra leisure time. Yay, good, right? Television ate up all of that. So all of the extra leisure time that we gained we dedicated entirely to television during that time. Because of this, the television has been called the 800-pound gorilla of leisure time. In this way, the most profound result of the television revolution has been that it pulls people into their homes, not just more often, but keeps them there longer. So it draws people in and it holds them in. That's why I said it was a process of social cocooning around the home. So that trend destroys community and civic engagement all by itself, that alone. Those people who list television on surveys as their primary form of entertainment are statistically less likely to do all community things like give blood, volunteer, write letters, make long-distance calls to friends, or attend any kind of public meeting like a city council. Decreases in voter participation should not be a surprise in light of that kind of a trend. So I suppose you could say that democracy suffers as a result of television if you're, into that kind of thing. The TV-dependent demographic is also statistically more likely to give other drivers the finger, illustrating nicely that too much social isolation tends to increase sociopathic behaviors. That was an actual survey, an actual study finding. And so in the end, what you wind up with is that we're an increasingly atomized nation. And you've probably heard that a lot if you look at social trends, is atomization, the breaking down of the social organism into its smallest parts. So we're isolated from our neighbors. The social costs of television have been conspicuously high in that case. Technology itself isn't to blame as the cause of this isolation, but it can be condemned as having streamlined the process of civic destruction. I mean, ultimately, we're responsible for the actions we take and what we spend our time doing, but the availability of technology certainly helps. So trying to put the blame on TV itself would be kind of foolish, like blaming Marilyn Manson or Nintendo or violent video games for violence. But again, it certainly exacerbates the situation. Another statistic as far as relationships between family members themselves, so between spouses, for example, there was one study I had found that showed that husbands and wives spend 3 to 4 times as much time watching television together as they spend talking to each other. So just think about, marriage with a TV in existence and marriage without a TV in existence, and the profound difference in interaction between spouses. Because, of course, if the TV wasn't there, they would likely spend at least some of that time, which constitutes, it looks like, 75% of their time together is now spent in front of the TV when it could be anything else. This illustrates the obvious fact that increased viewing of television naturally decreases interpersonal communication. I mean, that should have been obvious already. And if that wasn't enough, excessive viewing has been particularly detrimental on developing children by providing a purely passive visual stimulation. And it doesn't work to develop thought, reflection, or communication skills, anything that requires coming out of oneself. It's purely passive. You absorb. You're hypnotized. And so this, of course, is made worse by the isolation factor resulting from multiple television sets in each home. And that's what I'm going to talk about next. I found some numbers on that. So by 2006, the average American household had 2.55 people. So the average household had 2.5 people living in it. The same average household had 2.73 televisions. So that means that our residences are home to more TVs than people in this country. It's probably much worse now. That was almost 20 years ago. So that allowed the television to kind of accomplish the same isolating process within the home that it had already completed around the home. More than one TV in each home meant that gorilla of leisure time could not only draw a whole family away from the community, but it could go further by entertaining each family member individually and in separate rooms. By the year 2000, around 40 to 50% of our television viewing was done alone. In 1970, 6% of 6th graders had a television in their bedroom. And by 1999, that number had risen to 77%. Remember that the average American viewer uses a 4-hour dose of television every day. Combine that with the fact that children 8 to 18 spend less than 5% of their screen time with parents. Now, that's a lot of solitary viewing. And again, I was getting these numbers a long time ago before smartphones were a thing. So smartphones have only multiplied the problems with screen time. So this has had interesting psychological effects. As human beings, we can't help but be influenced by the picture of the world we see in front of us. And when the picture of the world that we see is the distorted one found on the television, we are definitely going to be unduly influenced by that distorted reality. So children, for example, who are already constantly trying to relate to someone, can easily relate to the TV characters, TV environments, ideas, interests that are portrayed on television. And I guess I do want to say that it's not about what you choose to watch on TV. It doesn't so much matter what's on the television, because just the availability of television itself tends to fracture the family. The more television sets there are in the home, the less likely it is for people living there to speak to one another. This is not because the people are evil or hateful or because they have bad relationships. It's simply because the television is far too easy a recourse for sensory stimulation. We live ever more hectic lives. We're ever more nervously exhausted. And we come home tired. And so in the competition for an individual's leisure time, TV has too many immediate perks, and the disadvantages are too subtle and distant to be immediately noticed. It takes a lot of discipline if you really want to watch something on TV to say, no, I'm going to deny myself that. For what? To go out and try to find some activity socially in a society that has abandoned all of those activities decades ago. Now it's very difficult to find anything else to do. So there was a poet, T.S. Eliot, captured the problem well when he said that TV is, quote, a medium of entertainment which permits millions of people to listen to the same joke at the same time and remain lonely. The deficiencies of the television experience can be illustrated better in another example. Imagine watching one of your favorite comedic sitcoms without the artificial laughter. There's something in us that finds it difficult to laugh without someone else laughing with us. The simulated laughter that we need on TV just sort of is a witness to the truth about human nature. We desire to share our joys. Funny things are funnier when someone else is laughing with us. And in some cases, I suppose if you're like me, you almost need the cue of someone else laughing to let you know when the funny parts are. And so I can't enjoy certain comedies if someone else isn't there with me. So my experience is actually impoverished. And so that laughter box that is used on TV is a picture of the great deceit of television, which is the lie that we can fully experience life's joys while alone. You know, early on in the television revolution, it was called the electronic fireplace. And that was the optimistic hope that it would replace the old crackling hearth, for a family gathering point. And that was, the similarity between the fireplace and the television set which replaced it. The fact that families do still gather around them, but it missed the primary difference between the two, which was the important one, that families are actually more likely to talk to one another if they're sitting around a fireplace. So I'm going to stop there for now. I do have some more notes here, but I'm trying to keep these videos to under 15 minutes. So I'll get into some more statistics that if you found this one interesting, then you might find those too. So just keep an eye out for the next part sometime.